Hi everyone, welcome back to another Diablo Immortal video. So in this video I'm going to be looking at another of the new Necromancer essences which I've only just got hold of, called Fateful Frame. So this is a Grim Scythe essence and it goes on the Helm. Now what this essence does is, Grim Scythe also marks enemies for 6 seconds. If a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, the mark explodes and deals 11,799 damage to nearby enemies. Damage increased by 90%. So yeah, it's quite cool, and it seems like it's a nice one to use when you've got multiple enemies, something like challenge dungeons, rifts, terror rifts, castle defense, anything like that. We've got loads of enemies. It seems like this is quite a nice one where you can sort of mark enemies, get them to explode and deal that damage across lots of different enemies. It seems like this is less useful when you're fighting a boss. It does seem like more of a PvE essence. I'm not sure how often I'd end up using Grim Scythe with this in PvP. I don't take Grim Scythe that much in PvP at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I guess it can be used if you want to mark other players and sort of deal that explosion, but it seems like this is quite useful in quite a lot of PvE environments. So let's check it out. So a lot of people use Grim Scythe with a damage over time build, with Corpse Lance as well, and you typically have the Corpse Lance causing enemies to decay in the Helm slots. And what we can do is we can swap that out with a new essence and just have a play around just to get a feel of the essence and see how it works. So let's go ahead and equip that essence now. And yeah, you get the 90% increased damage, and you get an additional 10% damage if the slot is awakened. There we go, Fateful Frame. So let's have a quick first try with it. Let's check out the skills tab first, just to make sure there isn't any additional hidden text or anything. Okay, so there it is at the bottom, but I'm just taking a look to see that it definitely works alongside Reaper's Calling, which is the whirling scythe, so it doesn't cancel that out. And it also works with Grim Scythe now triggers all continual damage on the targets it hits, causing them to instantly take the remaining damage. So this is really cool because it doesn't cancel out any of those essences. So you can see here, this is the new essence. Grim Scythe also marks enemies for 6 seconds. If a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, the mark explodes and deals 11,799 damage to nearby enemies. Damage increased by 90% and additional 10% damage. So you'll be able to do the extra 5 attacks by the whirling scythes around you or the Corpse Lance bones, because that's going to be some really quick damage within the 6 seconds to trigger that mark and deal that explosion. Let's see what it looks like first. So I'm just going to try it on the training dummy, and I'm looking out for the mark. Where is the mark? Hang on, I didn't see that mark. Under the training dummy I couldn't see it. And hang on, is it that glow? Hang on, wait. It's hard to see, but there is like a green glow on the training dummy. I wonder if that's a bug.
Seems.
Yeah, hang on, let me wait a few seconds. So if we just wait a few seconds, see that green glow goes, yeah, that green glow goes away. I wonder if that little green glow is the mark, and I wonder if it's just bugged on a training dummy where that mark doesn't appear properly. The mark's usually supposed to appear at the top of the enemy, and I think maybe it's just not appearing at the top of the training dummy. Let's go somewhere else and check this out just to see if we can confirm what that mark looks like, just so we know if the essence is actually working and when it's actually active. Let's go to Wortham because it's usually quite quiet there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lower the difficulty down because I just want to see what the mark actually looks like. And what I've also done is I've removed the legendary gems in my slots just to remove some extra variables and lots of other things getting in the way. I just want to clearly see this essence and the mark. I've only put Follower's Burden on the Helm just to get the extra 10% damage and to get the full properties for that essence. So let's run down here and take a look to see if we can see that mark more clearly. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I definitely saw a symbol there. I think that's a bit too easy. Let's bump that up to the next Inferno level. Yeah, I definitely saw, it was like a mini scythe symbol, like a green one. At least they've actually come up with a new symbol for this. Let's take a look again. Yeah, there we go. You can see that there's a small scythe symbol.
My wounds, man.
Cool. Okay, so that is the actual symbol that we're looking out for this essence. And I think actually this one might be better one to use if you're a bit further away, because then you can deal those marks further away. Yeah, okay, cool. At least I've confirmed what the mark looks like. So there we go, you should be able to see it there. It's like a very faint glowing mark above the above the spider's heads. So what we have to do is, within the required amount of seconds, you need to deal 5 attacks and you'll get an explosion. So let me go back to the training dummy now. Now that I've confirmed what the actual mark looks like, let's have a bit of a play at the training dummy. Okay, we're back at the training dummy. So that little green glow is definitely the mark. And all you have to do is attack the enemy 5 times within those 6 seconds. And you just get an additional explosion. And the explosion will spread towards nearby enemies. And that's basically how that essence works. It's quite simple really. The important question would it be useful to use in this damage over time build if you remove the decaying effect from Corpse Lance? So let's take a look at that. If we go back to the Corpse Lance decay, so we've got Corpse Lance decaying, we've got Bone Armor consuming nearby corpses to increase the damage, Grim Scythe is dealing continual damage, got some extra critical hit chance, you got Reaper's Calling with Grim Scythe, I got Corpse Lance consuming consuming corpses to deal with that vortex of bones. Command Golem, I'm not going to be using Command Golem. I'm probably going to leave out Command Golem and just test with Corpse Lance and Grim Scythe. Okay, so let's try for a minute and just see how we get on without the new essence, and then I want to try with the new essence. So this one obviously isn't doing the mark. But we're doing Corpse Lance Decay, some continuous damage. And then what we're going to do, we're going to equip the essence, the new essence, which does the mark and the explosion, and see if it does any additional damage. I don't think it will, but let's check to see if it's worth removing the Corpse Lance Decay and having an extra Grim Scythe essence instead. So we're just about coming up to the minute mark there. So that's, remember I've got no legendary gems here. So that's 33.2 mil. And the damage per second is 553 damage per second. Okay, now let's put the new essence on. Fateful Frame. So now we mark enemies for 6 seconds and get that extra explosion. Let's try again for 1 minute and see what kind of numbers we get, but I'm not going to use a golem just to remove one extra variable there. So we got 33.2 million damage last time. Yeah, it's annoying, it's really hard to see that mark on the training dummy. I wish it was a bit higher, so it was more clear. Yeah, I'd say that's a bug in the training dummy. Halfway in. I'm not sure we're going to get close to the Corpse Lance Decay. And there we go. So yeah, without that essence it is slightly less. We got 27.9 million as the total damage. Before we had 33.2 million, roughly. Before we had 553.5 damage per second, roughly, and this time we've got 464.8 damage per second. So it's not as strong as the Corpse Lance Decay, So if you are using this Corpse Lance build, which does that continual damage and the burst on the enemies, it's not worth using Fateful Frame over the Corpse Lance Decay one. You're better off sticking to Studded Menace over Fateful Frame. But Fateful Frame may have other uses when paired with other Grim Scythe essences as well.
You are not rash.
Okay, in this build I have Grim Scythe, Bone Armor, Mages and Command Golem. I use in Challenge Risk quite a lot. So in the Helm, I've got Grim Scythe also slices through the enemy's armor, increasing the damage taken. So this is a really useful one, and you kind of have to choose if you want to remove that enemy's armor, increasing the damage taken, or the mark which explodes. I guess the useful thing about the marks one, the Fateful Frame, is it does additional damage to nearby enemies, so quite good in a group. And then you could probably switch to another build if you're just fighting a single enemy or a boss. The other essences I've got are Bone Armor, it consumes corpses, increasing the damage you deal. Bone Armor increases critical hit chance. Skeletal Mage cooldown, but I'm not going to be using mages for this test. Grim Scythe now empowers you with Grim Calling, causing your primary attacks to unleash a slashing scythe when they hit enemies. The other ones I've got are the Skeletal Mage empowers untargetable mages, but I'm not going to be using mages. And I've got a Golem one and a Golem one, so we can ignore these three. I'm mainly going to be using Grim Scythe, yeah, just Grim Scythe really. And I'll remove the legendary gems that I've got in the slots as well. So let's remove all of the legendary gems. And I'll just put Follower's Burden in the top slot just to get the awakened property. Okay, so once again, we're going to just test for 1 minute with Gatefysk Helm and Craving Bay. Then we're going to replace Gatefysk Helm, which slices through enemies' armor, with the new Fateful Frame essence. So here we go, let's do a 1 minute test. So I'm only going to be using the primary attack and Grim Scythe. So Grim Scythe is doing those slashing attacks on the enemy, and it's reducing the enemy's armor, increasing the damage it takes. So it'll be interesting to see what numbers we get after 1 minute, and then swap with the new essence and see if it's any better. These are the two Grim Scythe builds that I use. So that's why I'm testing with these two, just to see how I get on. Okay, there we go. So after 1 minute, we've got 13.3 million damage and 222,000 damage per second. Remember, there's no gems equipped here.
I have much to
I'm now going to swap Gatefysk Helm with Fateful Frame, the new one. There we go. And let's see what the damage is like now. So let's reset and go again. Yeah, it's really hard to see that mark. That is really bad. You can barely see it. But hopefully those slashing scythes are triggering that mark to explode. Because it should be doing the 5 attacks that we need in the 6 seconds, along with my primary attack as well. Okay, just over halfway there.
I must wait.
Okay, another 10 seconds to go. There we go. 13.5 million. So that's really, really interesting. It was maybe on par or maybe just slightly better than Gatefysk Helm actually. Gatefysk Helm, I got the 13.3 million damage and 222,000 damage. With the new Fateful Frame essence, I've got 13.5 million damage and 224.8k damage per second. So it's actually very slightly better, kind of on par if not better than Gatefysk Helm. So in fact, with the Challenge Rift build that I've got going on, I should actually probably swap to Fateful Frame over the other one that I was using. So that's really interesting to see. I thought it was actually going to be worse, but yeah, okay, so that's good to know. And remember, we were comparing this against Gatefysk Helm, which is the one down right near the bottom here. Grim Scythe also slices through enemy armor. So we're comparing against these two. And yeah, it was interesting to see Fateful Frame wasn't that bad. It was just very, very slightly better than Gatefysk Helm. And the other advantage of Fateful Frame in, say, challenge rifts is it is going to do that explosion to nearby enemies as well, just to take off a little bit more health to those surrounding enemies. So what other essences can we swap out? So let's double check what other Grim Scythe essences we have on the Helm. So none of these ones here are Grim Scythe. So we've got Ebb and Leak. So Grim Scythe deals 1.1% increased damage for every 1% of the target's missing life, up to a maximum of 30%. It's not one that I use that often, so I'd say the new essence is probably better than Ebb and Leak. The other ones we have are Gatefysk Helm, which we just tested with. That's it. So they're the only essences that you could kind of replace. So Gatefysk Helm and Ebb and Leak are the two Grim Scythe head essences that you could swap out with the new Fateful Frame one, if you do want to use a Grim Scythe essence on the Helm. So let's have a look to see what else you could pair the new Fateful Frame essence with in the weapon slot. So if we have a look down here, so we've got this one we can try, Thrashjaw. Let's just check if there's any other ones. You've got Grave Cutter as well. We've got Defiling Swarm, which I've already tried the first time. You've got Exquisite Corpse. Grim Scythe now unleashes a blast of reaping wind. And that's it. So let's try with Thrashjaw to begin with. So this hurls a scythe in a direction, striking enemies in its path with continuous damage and knocking them away. Let's just make sure the mark works with that essence, which it should do. Yep, they both pair together nicely. So if we fire that Grim Scythe, you can see the mark is applied, and then all you have to do is do the 5 attacks within the 6 seconds and get that explosion on the enemy and any other surrounding enemies. And this is quite cool because you can cast that mark from a distance. Okay, so we've tried that one. Let's try the next one we have. So Grave Cutter. Grim Scythe now slices enemies in front of you several times, with a final swing inflicting a bleed. So let's double check the skills again. So you've got Razor's Edge, and you can see the new Fateful Frame essences. They work together. And what might be interesting is the bleed might help towards the 5 attacks, which can cause that explosion as well. So there we go. We've got the mark. I can only just about see that mark. It's really hard to see, but the mark is definitely there. And basically when you've got that mark, you've got the slashing scythes, and then you can do your primary attack. But I'd say this is a bit of a slow essence, so I wouldn't really pair those two together up. I don't like that. So now let's try the last one. So the last one is Exquisite Corpse. Grim Scythe now releases a blast of reaping wind, dealing damage and generating corpses. So let's double check the skills tab, make sure that's not bugged and they do work together. So you've got reaping wind, and you've got the new essence as well, Fateful Frame. So they definitely work together there. Okay, let's try this out. Yep, I definitely saw the mark there on the training dummy, so it definitely works together. And this is probably one which is quite good because you can cast that mark from a distance, and you can do the 5 attacks from a distance to explode the enemies around whichever enemy you're targeting. So that's quite cool. You've got a couple of uses for this new essence. You can use it in a distance, which is quite nice because you can use it with Reaping Wind, or you can use it with Thrashjaw, both where you can fire the Grim Scythe from a distance and you can cast that mark, and then you can do the 5 attack from a distance and cause enemies to explode while standing back. So that's pretty much how that new essence works. Let's go back to Wortham. Okay, let me get my gems back in. And let's equip that new essence again. So Fateful Frame. And we're going to equip an essence, a Grim Scythe essence, where we can trigger it from a distance. So for example, Thrashjaw. So one good use of this essence is you can actually get that mark on the enemies from a distance. So for example, if you're in a challenge rift or something like that where you need to stay back, get that mark on enemies from a distance, get the 5 attacks in, and then cause them to explode. So let's try on these ones. So yeah, you can see that Grim Scythe symbol above the enemy's heads, and then all you have to do is pair this with other skills and essences where you deal enough damage within the 5 seconds, oh no, it's a 6 seconds, sorry, and then you cause that explosion on the enemies. And that's basically how the new Fateful Frame essence works. Grim Scythe also marks enemies for 6 seconds. If a marked enemy is attacked 5 times, the mark explodes and deals 20,209 damage to nearby enemies. Now what's interesting is it doesn't actually specify that it does the 20,209 damage on the marked enemy as well as the surrounding enemies. It just says the mark explodes and deals 20,209 damage to nearby enemies. We're hoping that explosion is dealing damage to the marked enemy and then it's dealing additional damage to nearby enemies as well. So I'd say this is quite good to use when you're in something like a challenge rift or any environment where you've got lots of enemies around you, just to get that explosion across to as many enemies as you can. Even in castle defense, this might be a good one to use as well. And obviously there's loads of different essences that you could pair this with. To deal that really fast damage, you obviously want something like, you know, the Corpse Lance doing those spinning bones, or anything else which does lots of damage in quick succession during the 6 seconds, so you can get that explosion consistently every time. But yeah, if it comes to the traditional Necromancer Corpse Lance Grim Scythe damage over time build, it's best to stick to the decaying essence on the headpiece rather than Fateful Frame, because that did definitely deal way more damage. You'd want to use Fateful Frame in different scenarios, so yeah, keep that in mind. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. It was just my very first look at this essence, the first time I ever tried it. I just wanted to see how it worked and share that with everyone else as well who was curious, if you haven't got the essence, how it actually works. And yeah, it was nice to see that little Grim Scythe symbol above the enemy's head, so it's quite nice in like a green glow. It doesn't last for very long, obviously, and it doesn't work very well on a training dummy. You don't see it clearly, so that's why I was a bit confused and had to come to an open world area. But that's basically what it looks like. So you can see when you've actually marked the enemies and how long it's there for, and when you need to remark the enemies as well. So yeah, have fun with these essences. I'm sure there's lots of permutations that you can use with this one. It's quite interesting to see what you could pair this with. And it also pairs nicely with Ravening Silence, where Grim Scythe now triggers all continual damage on the targets it hits. So remember, you've got other Grim Scythe essences on the leg piece as well. So you've got Hissing Skin. Grim Scythe now increases all damage you deal by 2% for each enemy hit, up to 10% for 3 seconds. So let's double check, go to the skills tab and make sure they work together. So there we go, you've got the Grim Scythe marks enemies, the Fateful Frame, and then you've got Grim Scythe now increases all damage you deal by 2% for each enemy hit. And let's double check with the other leg essence as well. So you got Gilded Nightmare. If a target is killed within 3 seconds of being struck by Grim Scythe, it will inflict 5,613 damage to all nearby enemies and cause them to flee. Not one which I use often. So what's interesting is you could probably trigger the explosion here that deals 20,209 damage to nearby enemies, and you could probably trigger this one which inflicts 5,613 damage to all nearby enemies as well and cause them to flee in fear. So let's just double check that they work together. Yep, there's no bugs there, so you can see both of them are definitely active in Grim Scythe. And let's look at the last leg essence for Grim Scythe, Wraith Stitch Trues, where Grim Scythe now siphons the souls of enemies, increasing your primary attack speed by 5%. So yeah, you need nearby enemies to siphon the souls off for that one. But if we have a look, so you got Grim Scythe ciphering the souls, and you've got Grim Scythe marking enemies, so they work together as well. And then let's look at the last one down here. Hemorrhaging Shadow. Grim Scythe also applies bleed, dealing 4,865 damage per second for 3 seconds. So they pair nicely as well. So you got the mark for 6 seconds, and if the mark enemy is attacked by 5 times, the mark explodes. And then you've got Grim Scythe applies bleed, so you got the damage per second, which hopefully contributes towards the 5 attacks that you need to actually cause that explosion. So just let's take a look to make sure they work together. Yep, you've got Grim Scythe marking enemies, and then you've got the applying bleed as well. Let's head back to the training dummy one more time. Okay, I'm at the training dummy. I just want to hit the training dummy once. So you got the bleed taking continual damage. Okay, so yeah, they might be able to work together nicely there. So you get the mark on the target and then the bleed doing continual damage, helping towards that explosion, because it's going to help you get the 5 hits in for that explosion. So that's quite cool. Let's try take this into a challenge rift to end this video actually. Okay, so I've gone back to my challenge rift build where I'm going to equip Fateful Frame, the new essence, in the Helm, and I'm going to have Craving Bay, so from a distance I can do Grim Calling. That's going to mark the target and do this slashing scythes when they hit enemies, my primary attack hit enemies. So I'll be able to hopefully get those 5 attacks in those 6 seconds. And what I'll do is I will remove the bone armor, increase this critical hit chance, and I'll put a Grim Scythe essence in. So let's go with maybe the bleed one. Okay, so Hemorrhaging Shadow, and I think that should be it. So I've got Grim Calling, Hemorrhaging Shadow, and Fateful Frame all working together. So if we have a look at the skills tab, I've got Grim Calling, so I've got the Grim Scythe going to empower my primary attacks to unleash slashing scythes. I've got Grim Scythe marking enemies for 6 seconds and then it's going to explode. And then I've got Grim Scythe applying bleed, dealing 4,865 damage per second for 3 seconds. Let's go ahead and enter a challenge rift. And I'm basically looking out for the mark symbol on enemies. Yes, I can see the mark symbol, that's cool. And I'm just keeping an eye to see if that explosion... It's hard to actually see that explosion. It would be nice if that was more clear. But yeah, you can see Grim Scythe is triggering the continual scythe, the continual slashes, sorry, and it's also doing the mark above the enemy's heads. Cool, okay, let's just speed things up with this. I was trying not to use my summons because I wanted to just keep an eye on Grim Scythe, how it performs. Let's go a bit quicker now.
My health is restored.
Okay, I just about saw the mark symbol there. I was trying to keep an eye out for it. And then let's have a look at the boss. I'm trying to see if I can see the mark on the boss, but it's really hard to see. It was hard to see if that mark actually applied on the boss. I might have a check at the training dummy boss just to confirm. I think I can see it, yeah. No, the mark is definitely there. Yeah, I can see the mark. So it does work on bosses. The mark is definitely there. It's just really hard to see, but you can actually see the mark being applied. There we go. And yeah, that's definitely it for this video. I got a bit carried away there, trying lots of other things and just making sure that the mark definitely appears on the boss. But that's Fateful Frame, one of the new essences for Necromancer, and Hope you enjoyed watching that one, and have fun playing around with this essence. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.